It is with great pleasure that my wife and I welcome you to Windsor Castle on this, your second state visit to the United Kingdom. This relationship, which, with good reason...
The gold place cards had been arranged for weeks. Every seat at that state banquet had been assigned through a process that takes longer than most people realize. Protocol officers, household staff, and senior advisors spend days finalizing the exact order. Who sits nearest to which foreign dignitary? Which royals anchor the most visible sections of the table? And where the children of the future king are positioned to signal their emerging place within the line of succession. Nothing at a state banquet is accidental, and nothing is more deliberately chosen than where a child belonging to the future of the monarchy will sit. Princess Charlotte's chair had been decided. Her name was on the card. Her position had been confirmed. Then Camilla sat down in it. What happened next was not explosive. There were no raised voices before the guests arrived. No dramatic scene that filled the room with embarrassment. What happened was quieter than that, and in many ways, far more powerful. King Charles intervened first. William followed, and the correction that unfolded in those compressed, tension-filled minutes before the banquet began would ripple through the palace long after the evening ended. But to understand why this moment carried such weight, you need to understand what a state banquet actually is, who Charlotte is within the royal family's future, and why the chair she was assigned to sit in was never simply a chair. What a state banquet actually means. A state banquet, in plain terms, is one of the most formal events the British monarchy hosts. It is held at Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle when a foreign head of state visits the United Kingdom, and it brings together senior royals, political leaders, ambassadors, and invited guests for a dinner of extraordinary ceremony. The seating arrangement at a state banquet is not a courtesy, it is a statement. It reflects hierarchy, it reflects relationships between nations, and within the royal family itself, it reflects who is being positioned as central to the monarchy's identity. The preparation for a single state banquet involves hundreds of hours of coordinated effort. The master of the household oversees a team that handles everything from the positioning of crystal glassware to the precise angle of flower arrangements that have sometimes taken professional florists days to assemble. The table itself, often seating well over 100 guests, is set with a mathematical precision that would feel excessive in any other context. But this is not any other context. This is a room where the image of Britain, its monarchy, and its relationships with the world are constructed and presented simultaneously. Every detail is load-bearing. The place cards are part of that precision. They are not printed the night before. They are decided through consultation, revised through negotiation, and finalized only after sign-off from the most senior levels of the household. When a name appears on a gold card at a specific position, it is the result of deliberate choices made by people whose entire professional expertise is the management of royal meaning. To displace a card, even momentarily, even without intent, is to disturb something that was authored with far more care than the disturbance deserves. Charlotte's card had been placed, her seat had been designed. Charlotte's emerging role. Charlotte's placement at such an event had meaning beyond her age. She is a Princess of Wales, the only daughter of the future king, and the fourth in line to the throne. Her inclusion at a state banquet was itself a signal that the Wales children are being formally introduced into the visible architecture of royal duty. That matters because royal visibility is built through repetition. A child who attends, who sits, who is seen in the right places over years, is a child whose public identity is being shaped deliberately and carefully. Within the monarchy, children do not simply grow into their roles. Their roles are constructed around them through a series of carefully sequenced public appearances, each one building on the last, each one adding another layer to the identity that history will eventually record. Charlotte's presence at this state banquet was one of those layers. It was not her first formal royal appearance, but it was one of her most significant. A state banquet carries a weight that a garden party or a charity walkabout does not. It places a royal figure inside the machinery of statecraft, inside the relationship between Britain and the rest of the world, inside a room that foreign heads of state will remember and that diplomats will analyze long after the evening ends. Her chair was not a small gesture. It was a beginning. There is also the matter of what Charlotte represents to the public. She has, from her earliest appearances, generated a depth of affection in Britain that reflects something real about how the country sees the Wales family's future. She carries herself with a composure that surprises people who expect children to be unpredictable at formal occasions, and that composure has itself become part of her public identity. Evidence of the parenting behind it, evidence of the preparation, evidence that William and Catherine have been building something in their children that will endure. The State Banquet seat was an extension of that building project. It was the monarchy saying, in the wordless language of placement and protocol, "This child belongs here." So when Camilla, the Queen, lowered herself into that seat, apparently without noticing or perhaps while the final preparations were still being arranged, the household staff who saw it understood the complication immediately. They could not correct the Queen themselves. That is not how the palace works. The correction would have to come from above. It came from Charles first. Charles moves first. The king was already in the reception room when a member of household staff approached and spoke quietly to him. The conversation lasted less than a minute. Charles moved without hurry, without any visible shift in his expression that would alert the guests already filtering into the surrounding space. The king walked toward the banquet table and reached the section where Camilla sat with the composed confidence of someone who had not yet looked at the place cards. What Charles said is not fully known outside the room, but those nearby described his tone as controlled and careful, the voice of a man who had spent decades navigating corrections inside this family without allowing the correction to become a spectacle. He spoke to Camilla briefly. She looked down at the card, and the realization of where she had placed herself moved across her expression in a way that was impossible to miss for anyone watching closely. She had not moved immediately. That pause, short as it was, is what caused William to step forward. To understand the significance of that pause, you need to understand how these moments work inside the royal family. A correction delivered by a king to his queen is not the same as a correction between equals. It carries the full weight of institutional authority. When Camilla did not immediately rise, she was not defying Charles. She was processing. She was, in that brief window, absorbing the full meaning of what had happened and what rising from the chair would represent. In the royal world, the act of vacating a seat that belonged to another person is itself a public statement. It acknowledges the displacement, it confirms the correction, and it does so in front of staff, in front of the people whose job is to remember exactly these kinds of details. The pause lasted only seconds, but in a room with that much silent attention trained on the moment, seconds carry the weight of minutes. William arrives. William had been making his way along the reception line when the situation reached him. He had not seen it happen in real time. He had been told about it by one of the household coordinators, whose responsibility included managing the final seating check before guests were formally seated. William's response, by the accounts of those present, was immediate. He did not wait to see whether the situation would resolve itself. The Prince of Wales is protective of his children's public roles in a way that goes beyond ordinary parental instinct. He and Catherine have made deliberate choices about how slowly Charlotte, George, and Louis are introduced into royal duty. Every appearance is considered. Every public role is intentional. The State Banquet seat was not a casual inclusion. It was a step in a plan. And the moment that step was placed at risk, William moved. He arrived at the table with the same controlled composure Charles had used, but with something harder beneath it. Those who have watched William in moments of private tension describe a stillness in him that is more unsettling than anger would be. He does not raise his voice in environments like this. He does not need to. The weight of what he is, the future king, the father, the man most directly responsible for protecting the public identity of his children, carries the correction before he says a single word. He addressed the situation calmly. He made Charlotte's placement clear, and with Charles already having spoken, Camilla rose from the chair. The speed with which William moved after being informed is itself significant. He had options. He could have allowed Charles, who had already initiated the correction, to complete it without adding his own presence to the moment. The situation was being handled. Protocol was being restored. A reasonable man might have stayed where he was and trusted the process to conclude without his intervention. William chose not to do that. And that choice tells you everything about how seriously he takes the construction of his children's public identity. He needed to be present at the correction. He needed Charlotte's seat to be defended not only by the king, but by her father. Because the message those two presences sent together, Charles and William, the reigning monarch and the future one, united in the same moment of correction, was categorically different from the message one of them alone would have sent. Together, they said, "This is not negotiable." Together, they said, "This child's place within this institution is protected at the highest level." Together, they said, "The gold card with her name on it is not a suggestion that can be set aside while someone more senior gets comfortable." Why the chair was never just a chair. You might be wondering why this matters as much as it does. Why a chair at a dinner, even a state banquet, carries enough significance to warrant this level of attention. The answer lies in what royal seating actually communicates. Every placement at an event like this is studied by historians, journalists, royal observers, and foreign delegations. The position a person occupies at the table carries information about their standing, their future, and the family's priorities. When a child of the future king is placed at a certain position, it says something about the monarchy's direction. When another senior royal occupies that position instead, even briefly, it creates a different picture. And in a world where images of state banquets are published globally, where every visible arrangement is interpreted, the photograph taken before the correction was made would have told a story that was not the one the palace intended. Consider what the photograph would have shown without the correction. Camilla seated in the position designated for Charlotte. The Wales children's introduction to the ceremonial heart of the monarchy subtly disrupted. A visual record, permanent, shareable, analyzable, of the Queen occupying the space that had been designated for the future king's daughter. Royal observers would have noticed, historians would have filed it, and inside the palace it would have become the kind of detail that resurfaces in every subsequent conversation about the balance between the Camilla side of the family and the Wales side. The chair was not just a chair. It was a statement about Charlotte's place in the monarchy's future. And that statement had been carefully authored by people whose job is to think about exactly this kind of meaning. Camilla, sitting in it, whatever the reason, threatened to re-author it. The weight of history between these two families. The history between these two sides of the royal family is long and documented and does not need to be rehearsed in full here. But context matters for understanding why this particular moment detonated with such force inside the palace. Catherine and Camilla have always existed in an uneasy parallel. Both are women who entered the royal family through marriages that redefined the institution. Both have worked to establish public identities that go beyond their relationship to the men beside them. Both carry the weight of public scrutiny in ways that are relentless and unforgiving. And both have, at various points, found themselves in competition for something the royal family only grants in limited quantities: visibility. Visibility inside the monarchy, as we have seen in other moments, is never random. It is protected, contested, and assigned. It decides who is seen as central to the institution's future and who exists at its edges. When William blocked Camilla's speech at the National Portrait Gallery event, defending Catherine's earned cultural patronage against what he saw as an intrusion, that incident did not resolve the underlying tension. It drew a clearer boundary. It told everyone inside the palace what the Prince of Wales would and would not accept. This state banquet moment arrived in that same context. And so when Camilla sat in Charlotte's chair, even if unintentionally, even if the oversight was genuine, it landed inside a family that was already carrying the bruise of earlier confrontations. Good intentions are complicated when the pattern around them keeps repeating. The palace does not evaluate individual incidents in isolation. It evaluates them as part of a sequence. And this sequence had been building for longer than most of the guests at that state banquet realized. What made this moment different from previous tensions was the involvement of a child. The disputes between Catherine and Camilla over public visibility, over speaking roles and event prominence, had always been contests between adult women navigating a complicated institution. Charlotte is not part of that contest. She is a child being prepared for a life she did not choose, being introduced into public duty at an age when most children are thinking about nothing more consequential than what to have for lunch. Her inclusion in the state banquet was the result of her parents' careful, loving, deliberate planning. To have that planning disrupted, even accidentally, by the same dynamic that had already caused friction in other settings, was something William could not absorb quietly. Was this deliberate? Camilla, by all accounts, had not planned this. The people who know her best describe the moment as a genuine confusion of placement, the kind that happens in large, complex events where dozens of staff members are managing hundreds of details simultaneously. She is not by nature a woman who schemes her way into children's chairs at state occasions. She is disciplined, experienced, and deeply aware of how these events work. But intention does not erase consequence inside the royal family. It never has. The consequence here was that the correction had to happen publicly enough for the household staff and others in the room to witness it. That means the story of what happened did not stay contained to the three principals involved. It moved through the palace the way these things always move, through the small, efficient network of staff and advisors who are present at every critical moment and who carry what they see into the corridors afterward. The distinction between accident and pattern is one that royal observers have long grappled with in covering this family. A single incident can be dismissed as coincidence. 2 incidents become a question. 3 become a conversation that the palace can no longer manage through careful press statements. The National Portrait Gallery speech, the State Banquet chair, these are 2 data points in a sequence. Whether the individual actions were deliberate matters less, in the end, than what the accumulation of them communicates to the people inside the institution who are responsible for managing its long-term stability. There is also a subtler dimension worth examining. The palace's internal culture is one where unspoken signals carry as much weight as direct instructions. Senior royals do not typically announce their intentions before acting on them. They move, and the movement itself becomes the message. Staff read those movements with the precision of people whose careers depend on reading them correctly. When Camilla sat in Charlotte's chair, every person in that room who noticed, and several did, began performing the same rapid calculation. Was this an accident, or was it a test of what would be allowed? The answer, delivered swiftly by Charles and William, settled that calculation permanently. Charles understood this. William understood it more acutely. And the speed and unity of their response was, in part, a response not just to this incident, but to the pattern it was in danger of extending. By the time the banquet formally began, the correction had been made. Charlotte sat in her assigned place. The evening proceeded. The foreign head of state saw nothing unusual. The photographs published afterward showed the royal family arranged exactly as the protocol officers had intended. But the atmosphere inside the family for the hours that followed was not what it appeared to be in those photographs. How Charles managed the aftermath. Charles handled the aftermath with the particular skill he has developed over a lifetime of managing tensions inside a family that has almost never been fully at peace with itself. He did not treat the incident as a crisis. He did not punish the moment with coldness or dramatic withdrawal. He spoke to both Camilla and William afterward, in separate conversations, with the quiet authority of a man who understands that the monarchy cannot afford visible fractures, not at a state banquet, not in front of foreign delegations, not ever. Charles has spent more years than anyone inside this institution absorbing its contradictions. He knows what it is to love people who do not easily coexist. He knows what it is to manage a family whose private dynamics are permanently at risk of becoming public spectacle. He knows, perhaps better than any living person, that the monarchy's survival depends not on the resolution of every internal tension, but on the management of those tensions with enough discipline that the institution's public face remains coherent. His conversations after the banquet were not about blame. They were about continuity, about what the family needed to project going forward, about the kind of unity, functional, visible, deliberate, that allows an institution like the British monarchy to absorb private strain without fracturing in public view. What made those conversations particularly delicate was the fact that both people Charles spoke to were, in their own ways, right. Camilla had not intended to displace Charlotte. William had been entirely correct to defend his daughter's designated place. Charles was managing not a conflict between wrongdoing and innocence, but a collision between 2 legitimate sets of feelings. Camilla's genuine confusion and embarrassment, and William's equally genuine protective instinct. Threading that needle without leaving either person feeling dismissed required exactly the kind of emotional intelligence that Charles has spent a lifetime developing inside one of the world's most emotionally demanding institutions. But Charles also understood what William had needed to protect. The king has watched his son become increasingly deliberate about building the Wales family's public identity in a way that is independent, intentional, and resistant to being absorbed into other people's narratives. He has seen William and Catherine work for years to create a version of royal duty that centers their children's futures clearly and without ambiguity. He knows why the chair mattered. Charles did not tell William he was wrong. He told him the situation was handled. Those are different things. William accepted that distinction. He had stopped what needed to be stopped. He had made the correction. He was not, in this moment, interested in anything beyond that. Camilla received the night's end with the quiet dignity that has become one of her most consistent public characteristics. She did not make the incident a confrontation. She did not seek to litigate who was right or what the sequence of events had actually been. She understood what Charles had communicated, and she moved on from the moment with the composure that, whatever people think of her history, no one can deny she possesses. The family had, on the surface, absorbed the incident without catastrophe. But surfaces in this family have never told the full story. Charlotte arrives. Princess Charlotte, for her part, had not witnessed the moment in the way that adults in the room witnessed it. She was still being prepared for the evening when the correction was made. Dressed, briefed, brought through the choreography that royal children learn as early as they are capable of absorbing it. She arrived to find her place card where it had always been, her chair empty and waiting. She sat down with the calm that characterizes all three Wales children at formal occasions, a calm that has been noticed repeatedly by those who observe royal events professionally, and that speaks to the extraordinary work William and Catherine have done in preparing them for a life that most people could not imagine navigating at any age. Charlotte did not know that the chair had briefly held someone else. She knew only that the evening was hers to attend, that she was a Princess of Wales at a state banquet, and that the gold card with her name on it was exactly where it was supposed to be. That innocence, in a way, was the point. The adults in her life had made sure that what could have disrupted her evening did not reach her. That is what protection looks like when it works correctly. Invisible, complete, and given without requiring the person being protected to know it was necessary. When Charlotte takes her seat at future state banquets, and she will many times over the decades ahead, she will do so without the shadow of this incident crossing her memory. She will sit with the confidence of someone whose place has always been secure, because the people responsible for her understood that confidence is built not only through what you teach a child, but through what you shield them from. The battles fought on Charlotte's behalf before she walked into that room are battles she will never need to know were fought. That is the gift William and Charles gave her that evening. What the incident revealed. The question that remained after the evening ended was not about the incident itself. It was about what the incident revealed. Every family has these moments. Small confusions that land in already sensitive territory and detonate with disproportionate force because they arrive carrying the weight of everything that came before them. The Wales-Camilla tension is not a simple rivalry. It is the result of a long history of loyalty and displacement, and the peculiar pressure of being female and royal, and expected to project unity when unity is not always what you feel. What the state banquet chair moment revealed is that the boundaries William has been drawing around Catherine's events, around Charlotte's public identity, around the space the Wales family occupies within the institution, are not theoretical. They are operational. He acts on them. He does not wait to see whether the intrusion will self-correct. He moves. And when Charles moves alongside him, as he did in this instance, the message is amplified in a way that a single intervention could never achieve. The king and the future king, together, correcting the same situation, sends a signal that is felt throughout the palace hierarchy. It says the boundary is not just William's preference, it is the institution's position. The incident also revealed something important about the nature of royal protection at this particular moment in the monarchy's history. The Wales family is in the process of becoming the monarchy's primary public face. Charles's reign, whatever its length, is a transition from the era of the late Queen to the era that William will define. Every step Charlotte and George and Louis take in public is a step toward that future. Every seat they occupy at a state banquet, every speech they will eventually make, every patronage they will eventually hold, is part of an edifice being constructed with enormous care and long-term intention. Protecting those steps, protecting those seats, is not a small matter. It is the project. It is the work that William and Catherine have committed their lives to in a way that goes beyond duty and into something that looks, from the outside, like genuine vocation. Camilla's position. After the evening, Camilla knows this. Whatever the warmth that exists between her and Charles, whatever the genuine affection that connects parts of this complicated family, she understands the architecture of power inside the monarchy. She has spent enough years studying it from close proximity to know that when two kings, one reigning, one future, agree on a correction, the correction is final. Her silence in the hours after the banquet was not weakness. It was intelligence. She had been the queen long enough to understand when a moment calls for quiet and when it calls for engagement. This was a moment for quiet, but quiet is not the same as healed. And inside this family, not healed has a way of staying present, dormant beneath the polished surface of joint appearances and coordinated press releases, waiting for the next occasion, the next seating arrangement, the next evening where the gold place cards are set out and someone has to decide who belongs where. Camilla has built a public role of genuine substance during her years as queen consort and now as queen. She has championed causes around literacy, domestic violence, and the welfare of animals with a consistency and evident personal investment that even her critics acknowledge. She has handled the peculiar cruelty of public judgment, for her history with Charles, for the shadow she has always cast in comparison to the late Princess Diana, with a resilience that most people could not sustain. She is not a villain in this story. She is a woman navigating an institution that has never made navigation easy for anyone, and doing so with more grace than the tabloids have typically been willing to credit. But grace has limits when the institution's future is at stake, and the institution's future is now named Charlotte and George and Louis. It is William and Catherine. It is the Wales family and the world they are building together. Camilla's grace, genuine as it is, cannot extend into the space that belongs to those children. That is the lesson of the gold place card. That is what the correction was communicating. And that is the understanding Camilla carried away from the evening, whether she welcomed it or not. The evening closes. The state banquet continued. The speeches were made. The visiting head of state was honored. The room was photographed and the photographs were published, and they showed, as intended, a royal family arranged in dignified, deliberate order. The king and queen at the center, the prince and princess of Wales nearby, the children of the future monarchy seated and present and beginning, in their composed and careful way, to occupy the public space that has always been waiting for them. Charlotte's chair was in the photograph. Her name had been on the card. She had sat there for the entirety of the evening. The correction had held. The plan had prevailed. The image told the story that was intended. What the image did not show, could not show, was the moment before, the correction behind it, the conversations that followed, or the quiet knowledge that everyone who had been in that room carried away with them. The knowledge that the monarchy's future is being defended with a precision and a resolve that does not leave room for accidents of placement, that the children of William and Catherine are being positioned with intention and protected with force, that when the gold place cards are set out, the names on them are not suggestions, they are statements, the final meaning. And in the royal family, a statement defended twice, by a king and by a future king, in the same moment, in the same room, is a statement that does not need to be repeated. The evening will be remembered in many ways by the people who attended it. They will remember the music, the food, the diplomatic formalities performed with the precision that Britain's royal household has refined over centuries. They will remember the grandeur of the setting and the elaborate ritual of a state banquet in full form. But the people who were closest to what happened, who saw the household coordinator approach Charles, who watched the king walk quietly toward the table, who noted the brief pause before William arrived to reinforce the correction, will remember something else entirely. They will remember that when Princess Charlotte's name was on a chair at a state banquet, two of the most powerful men in the British monarchy made certain that no one else sat in it. And that is not a small thing. That is the Wales family's future, defended in real time, in one of the most ceremonially significant rooms in Britain, before the first course was served. The chair was returned to its rightful occupant. Charlotte sat in it, and the evening, like all great royal evenings, proceeded as though nothing had happened at all. Thanks for watching. If this story told you something you didn't know, hit the like button and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a royal update.